Well, hello, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to a great Brandon Hall Group webinar, actually a roundtable discussion. We have a great topic today with a great panel. It's Rev Up Revenue, Reimagining Sales Enablement Through Breakthrough Results. I'm Claude Werder. I'm Senior Vice President and Principal Analyst with Brandon Hall Group, and I have a great panel with me today of sales enablement experts to talk about this important topic. Let me introduce them real quickly for you. We have Jeff Griggs, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at Litmos. As a Silicon Valley sales veteran, he has spent his career building highly scalable revenue-focused teams. And then prior to Litmos, Jeff served as Chief Revenue Officer for Eightfold and has over 20 years of high growth experience with Salesforce, Oracle, and Aptus. Joining him is Chris Richards, Head of Corporate Development at Litmos. He has successfully scaled market-leading software and technology companies for top private equity firms, Vista Equity Partners, Susquehanna Growth Equity, TA Associates, and Francisco Partners. Next, we have Ted Martin, proven revenue executive and president and CRO of Factor 8. He's also a sales coach and operations leader with over 15 years of hands-on experience. Ted has built 14 sales and revenue teams, which have achieved notable results and established himself as a subject matter expert in building growth-focused revenue teams. And last but certainly not least is Steve Richard, is SVP of Enablement at MediaFly following their acquisition of ExecVision, which is the company that Steve founded in 2022. Steve's mission and life's work is to help as many sales teams as possible become wildly successful. He's been featured in numerous publications, including Harvard Business Review, the Washington Business Journal, and the Washington Post. Welcome to everyone. And thank you to our webinar sponsor, Litmos. Litmos develops learning solutions for top-performing companies. An established leader since 2007, Litmos Learning Solutions includes the easiest-to-use LMS, comprehensive learning content collections, integrations with top workflow tools, and services to support success. Thousands of companies trust Litmos Learning Solutions to deliver instruction and intelligence to employees, customers, and partners. The solutions are used by more than 30 million people in 150 countries across 35 languages. Look them up and find more information at www.litmos.com. A few words about Brandon Hall Group for those who might not be familiar with us. We're a human capital management research and advisory firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. We have 6 practice areas, including learning and development, talent management, and leadership development. Quick mention that we currently have several certification programs open for enrollment, including our Certified Learning Strategist program, which includes a sales training and enablement. Visit certification.brandonhall.com to learn more about how to earn that designation. Your participation in our research surveys is one of the most crucial components of Brandon Hall Group insights and thought leadership. So if you have a few minutes to take one of our open surveys that we see on the screen here. I forgot to, there we go. We would appreciate it. Links will be in your handout, or you can always go to brandonhall.com. And finally, a few logistics before we get started in earnest here. To ask questions, please use the questions panel on your control bar. And we will leave time at the end for questions. Also, we'll be taking questions during our discussion today. The roundtable discussion is being recorded, and we'll share a link to the recording and a PDF of the presentation via email in 24 hours or less. If you'd like to download a copy of today's presentation instantly, the link to do so will be available in the chat shortly. The chat is also open today, and we hope you'll log in and use the chat, make some comments, and share your experiences along the way, or simply, excuse me, or simply let us know where you're coming from today. And we look forward to getting as much participation as possible. Stay until the end, and you may be a raffle winner. We do hold a raffle at the end and award a $100 Amazon gift card. So we'll look forward to that at the end. We want to get going right away and get your input on a poll question. And we'll have a couple more during the course of the webinar as well. And the first thing we want to do to get us started is just ask you what your biggest challenge is when it comes to sales enablement. Is it lack of effective training and coaching? Inadequate sales tools or resources? Misalignment between sales and marketing? Difficulty measuring impact and ROI? All of those things, all of the above, or none of the above? And this is just a really good way to get us started, get you thinking about the topic, and also give us a sense of what's your biggest challenge as we go through our discussion today so that we can be of help. So Shay, our producer behind the scenes, will let us know when we have a decent amount of answers here, and we'll see where we are.
Hey, Claude, while we're waiting for their,
Yep.
just curious to hear from Ted or from Jeff or Chris what they're seeing in their conversations in the field.
I mean, misalignment between sales and marketing, like people have been talking about that for like 50 years, right? So and that's always topic number one. But I think also, we've actually had a lot of people that have been focusing on developing their frontline managers, actually paying attention to that versus, and so I think the lack of coaching and people being interested in that has actually, I've been pleasantly surprised by seeing that being a topic. Jeff, what about for you guys?
Yeah, I'll comment and I'll let Chris chime in here, but I wish there was a bigger list here, right? Because I would definitely put all of the above, but there's a major, challenge. I think Ted, you hit on it, right? The frontline enablement piece, not only for managers, but just for the field sellers and the partners and the CSMs and everybody that, we'll talk about later in this webinar, is that everybody is consistently seeing change. And if they're not enabled, and if they're not, when we use this term, and I'll have to give credit to our HR team, which is, the best at getting better. They constantly have to be evolving and changing, and we have to be doing better that communication to each of the different external lines of business, and we have to be doing better, training and coaching our sales, managers. That's a big piece of what we're seeing as well, and I'll let Chris comment there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I see the results coming in now, and I'm not surprised to see all the above being the top score here. But as Jeff said, this list could be much longer. But the thing that I always hear the most is the disconnect within the organization itself, right? You have siloed organizations that aren't talking to each other. And the reality is revenue enablement requires the whole organization to be swimming in the same direction to make it work. So that's really what stands out to me. And I'm not surprised to see all the above come out on top.
Chris, real quick, I did a informal poll of a few customers, and I would go to their CMO and I'd go to their CRO and I said, what are your top 3 enablement priorities for this quarter? Forget about the year, for this quarter. They didn't have one in common across all of them. If you can't agree on number 1, 2, and 3, or at least number 1,
then you're definitely not in alignment. Yep. And we see that throughout of human capital management and learning too. I mean, there's just the alignment is the number one thing, and it has been, as I think Ted mentioned, it has been for years. Nothing's really changing, unfortunately. All right, let's move on to our get started for the day here. So we've got a lot of topics we're going to try to weigh in on. Here's the agenda. First, we'll talk about the evolution of sales and revenue training and development, then go into kind of comparing sales training versus sales enablement versus revenue enablement. Then how do we drive revenue enablement? How does AI help revenue enablement? And then some key takeaways and final thoughts, and we'll take some questions at the end if we haven't during the course of the discussion. So let's get started. The evolution of sales and revenue training and development. And Steve, why don't you get us going?
Yeah, and actually, I think that next graphic is the one that really kind of tells us how it's, if you go back in the day, and funny enough, Ted and I used to work together. We didn't even know we were going to be here. We were colleagues. If you go back to when we were building our old sales training business, in many cases, we were still selling to L&D, learning development within HR back in the day. The concept of a sales enablement function moniker did not exist. That's kind of your tadpole to the left. And then over time, what saw happen is that, I think there was probably an acknowledgement of HR and sales leaders to say, hey, there are some specialized needs in a revenue function for learning and development. And now we have this function called sales enablement that probably started more with the reps that close business and carry quotas, which are usually called account executives or territory managers or sales directors. And then it really extended from there to the sales development teams, the BDRs and the SDRs at Prospect. But then what we saw is as that kind of evolved, now we're moving into the late teens here, you start to see enablement being asked to support the customer success folks as well, support the sales engineers as well. If they have value engineers that build business cases or solution consultants that are technical, all the different folks that kind of revolve around the revenue go-to-market function, anybody customer facing. And then finally, now I've started here, this is kind of a surprise to me because this does break a silo down. A lot of marketing folks that I work with they hire new marketing people, they're actually having those new marketing people through the revenue enablement onboarding that you would give to like a sales rep or to a customer success rep. So I actually think there's a really good development when it comes to alignment, where now they're literally going to get the same part of their training. So that's the evolution we've seen over time. Curious what you guys think.
I'm happy to comment here, Steve, and I love the visual here. I can tell you that one of the major things, and by the way, there's nothing we love more here at Litmus than racing models, and Chris can attest to that. The evolution of partnership between who we're hiring, who we're enabling, and personalizing the needs of a seller or a CSM or whoever that is in the field, and our partnership with HR has become, I would say, very important. So we identify now kind of upfront those reps you alluded to, Steve, that are good at selling or great at selling or great at getting outcomes, from an existing customer, whatever that is. And then taking that and putting that into a model where we say we need more of these people to be part of the business. And then we also need to identify those skill gaps or those behavior gaps using the racing model to say it's not just about the outcome of what a sales rep did or what a CSM did or a partner lead did. It's really about what the behaviors and skills we're going to train to and what we're going to enable to. And that's been a big change for us. And that's certainly been a big part of our, I would say, enablement function and our partnership with the different lines of business, to your point.
So what are, like, Jeff, when you're seeing that, what are the things people are enabling on? Because when in the organizations that either I've worked within or that we work with, what we're seeing is people or organizations are doing relatively well teaching about their products and services. They'll teach about their sales process if they have one clearly defined. But they won't teach about things like sales skills, or they won't teach about like the buying process, some of these things that are much more, unfortunately, like you have to be further along in your sophistication of an enablement organization to be able to do that. So I just was interested, like from y'all's perspective, like what is it being enabled on? Because there's a lot to enable on, right?
Yeah, and I'll go back to the racing model to give a couple examples, Ted, because it's a great question, right? Because the methodologies that are out there, Sandler, any of the major challenger methodologies that are out there,
Hyman, Richardson.
Yeah, there's so many I would say intricacies in that. But looking at again, I talked about skills and behaviors. That's going to be highly focused on, okay, does this person have the ability to have a professional conversation with an individual, and how are we going to score that?
Yeah.
Does this person have the ability on the soft skills front to be able to get multiple access points or lines of business or relationships built into a deal, especially if you're doing enterprise selling? These are all the things that you really look at to enable that are outside of normal, hey, I know the product really well and I can demo it, and hey, I really am good at articulating the value, versus what are the soft skills that are going to enable me to be much better and more effective in my role. And one of those big things that we've identified is how capable of is this person of learning and being a challenger in regards to learning and being more inquisitive in what they do. Because I'm sure none of us have ever heard a sales rep who's been at the company for a long time say, I don't need any more training. I already know everything. So that's the kind of cultural and change management piece of enablement that we are always trying to make our better reps, even better. Again, back to the, just getting better at what we do every day.
And
So
Jeff,
that,
I'll build on that. It seems like we've done better in enablement and in sales leadership at getting reps to ask basic questions about challenges or pain points or goals or risks to avoid, those things. Where I'm seeing the big gap right now is asking questions about the business reasons and the business case. And this is the reason that these deals stall and go to die, because if you ultimately don't have a business case and a business value justification,
I actually, to build on that, like, I think people are so used to asking, okay, like, what are your, God forbid someone asks you, what are your pain points or what are your challenges? Like, I mean, it's right. So like people are literally asking that question, which is, we'll do another webinar on that. But like I think the point that I was thinking about is like educating your people on how to use that information. Right? Like you can get, like, people will gather information. I think they've gotten relatively well at that. Now it's, okay, what do you do when you have it? And how do you use it as a professional salesperson? And what I would venture to say is that for the most part, I think enablement teams have done a very good job of building training content and implementing training content. But where we fail is on the coaching perspective and the consistent reinforcement. And one of the things, I had worked with some folks in the past where they said training isn't something you did, it's something you do. And although that's a great concept, like, that's actually not true. Like, training is something you did, but coaching is something you do.
Well,
and it's the ongoing reinforcement that has to drive the success. And I think we're just now starting to truly realize that. As coaching driving performance versus just relying on training.
So that's a good segue. Let's talk about the sales training versus the sales enablement, and then the revenue enablement. So Ted, you're on a roll. What are the differences there?
Yeah, so I guess when you think about sales training, sales training is all about this concept of, okay, like, and I have always, when Steve and I were doing Vorsight together and partners, I told him I would leave training forever. And it was because, like, there was this fundamental issue that I have with sales training companies, and it's this prefix menu to sales training. Here's our 2-day, prospecting for everyone course and our discovery that's going to get results, workshop. And, when you think about that, you can't be successful if you just rinse and repeat sales training within every single organization that you go into. And so I believe that sales training has grown into this concept of enablement, but it's hard for enablement leaders, if you have one in your organization, because you get hired and they promise you the world in a lot of cases. And then guess what? The first thing to get ripped apart is the sales enablement budget. Right. And the idea of, okay, well, we hired you to do this, now go off and do it, but you're not going to have a lot of reinforcement tools that you have access to, or the sales managers probably aren't going to do a lot of the coaching that you try to follow up on. And so now what we're seeing is that, like, sales training grew into sales enablement. Sales enablement is now growing into revenue enablement because there's CROs now that hold marketing and sales, but the enablement people a lot of times are not given more strength now that they're trying to enable more people. And so we talked about misalignment, but I'd love to hear from you all. Like, we come at this from a different perspective. Factor A, sales training, and, my personal experience as a sales leader. And then, with MediaFly and Litmus, you all come at it from a technology perspective, right? Chris, from your point of view, like, what are you seeing with the landscape around, okay, we've increased what now it's an revenue enablement leader. You now have to enable more people, but you're not necessarily going to be invested in more. Like, are you seeing that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, I think traditionally people have always narrowly focused on just the sales team for this problem, right? They look at my account executives and they said, how do I onboard them more quickly? How do I get them giving the pitch effectively? And left it at that. And really, revenue enablement to me is just like a much broader piece of the pie. It's the whole organization on how we come together when we release a new product or service, right? How are we all getting that same message and making sure we're getting it out timely, and that all the pieces that touch and interface with customers are speaking the same language ultimately. So that is really the critical element for me. I lead partnerships here at Litmos, and it's an often forgotten piece of the revenue pie in this, because they don't sit within the four walls of your organization. Your resellers, your channel partners, they can constitute over 50% of the bookings that come into your company, but because they're not an actual employee of your company, they're often overlooked, but they need this messaging just as much as anyone else.
And I would think revenue enablement is also a way to reinforce the de-siloing of everything, right? Because it goes beyond everything. It brings people together under a bigger umbrella.
Well, and so I agree with the concept that's being made, but the application I would call bold BS. Excuse me.
Okay.
So the reason why I say that is because everyone is saying they're doing it by creating these titles and creating these roles, but when it comes to practical application, what is king is end of month, end of quarter, end of year, and so a lot of and like if you look at you could venture to say right now is one of the hardest selling times that we've had in years. And what do we as revenue leaders and sales leaders do? We rip people out of what our normal plan of action is, which is coaching, reinforcing, development. And we say, we've got to do everything we can to hit the number. And so I think, not to poo-poo the whole thing, Claude, but I would, going back to it, the application is not there.
Yeah, let me give a real concrete example of this. I just was working with a client that has a revenue enablement title now. They brought the various enablement people under that one leader, so the org chart is unified. Great. Now a new chief customer officer came in. She didn't like the direction she was seeing in sales and in what marketing was doing in terms of content. She said, this isn't ultimately going to allow me to achieve my number. Now she's got her own little enablement skunkworks team that she stood back up again. That's both customer enablement and enablement for CS. So now all of a sudden we're back to silos again. Now we have customer success reps and the customers being trained on one thing, and you've got the sales team, SDRs, and marketing that are working off of different content, not just for training, but also even just for the customer facing content, that enablement content that goes out in the marketplace, both internal and external. So that's the kind of thing that happens, that it could look good on paper, but until you literally get wherever that org chart meets, wherever the branches of the org chart touch, that person has to be in alignment with these people. And if they're not, unfortunately, they have to be the referee.
Yeah.
And they have to ultimately say it's going to be their way or their way.
Yeah. One just quick comment to your point there, Steve, is functional alignment does not make alignment. And what I would tell you is that if you do not take the time and the energy to look at the buyer's journey, and you do not take the time to document that, you miss out on that total alignment. And you continue down the silos that Ted was talking about. And Chris, certainly on the partner front, we've got a big portion of our business that comes from partnerships. And if you don't align, on the buyer's journey, the partnership journey, all of those, you just miss the boat completely.
And Jeff, so it's funny, this client, I said, look, the chief customer officer, I talked to her and I said, have you ever actually talked to the chief revenue officer about the fact that you don't see this as working? And the answer was no, and said she just kind of went on her own path. And that's the kind of thing that have to talk to them first.
So this chart kind of gives a graphic depiction of some of what we're talking about. Anybody want to talk about this real quick before we move on?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I mean, the mindset that what we were trying to help people with, and I don't know if now that I'm looking at it, I don't know if we did it as clearly as we probably could have. There's a lot on here, but the idea here is who's involved in revenue enablement and what does that look like, right? And the mindset is that it's actually full circle of a relationship where you've got product that should be involved, which drives marketing's involvement, which drives now business development, sales development, traditional sales, and then driving into sales engineering and then customer success, right? And eventually you need to resell your customer, even if they renew. You always need to be selling, right? And so this concept of, thinking about revenue enablement, it's more than just sales. It's more than just sales development or business development. It's more than, alignment with marketing. Is marketing aligned with product, and is sales aligned with customer success, and is there full alignment? That's really what you want to be thinking about, is involving everybody to have a seat at the table and helping drive the revenue enablement plan. I've seen a small amount of organizations where they do this very, very well. But I'd be open to see, like, Chris, Jeff, Steve, like, what are you all seeing with who's at the table right now?
Well, Ted, I'd love to hear one of those customer names, because I have not seen that one yet. So
Hey,
please
Jeff,
share.
I'll give you one that I've actually seen a few. So I've had a chance to work with it, like, in the hundreds of organizations. The ones that seem to get this right is the crews that have worked together before in their past. That actually seems to be the biggest indicator of success. So, like, if there's a crew that worked together in another company and they had a nice IPO, and then the private equity group puts in that kind of same crew and they bring their people over. It's almost like football coaches bringing their staffs. It's the same concept, because now they're all singing to the music. They all know the same playbook and they're implementing it and they're aligned. And actually, so I'm gonna parlay that into a question from Jeff, which is good, because we've talked a lot about the concept of enablement, moving from, quote, sales training, and then moving into actually, being able to do coaching and everything. The one open question there is like, well, how do you do that? How do you start to get these organizations to understand that? And then we'll move on. But yeah.
So I will say, the one thing that oversimplifying this, start with a conversation. Like, literally, like, sit down with someone in product that you trust and think is, has a good view of things. Sit down with someone in the different types of silos that you see here in marketing and sales development, and just talk through, hey, what can we do, right? And literally, it sounds so simple, but the first training that you can put together, you can build a very simple enablement plan and identify what you want to coach and train on. I think oversimplifying it, like, that's where I would start. But I don't know, guys, do you see something different?
No, I mean, it starts with a cultural change up at top, right? So if you really value enablement and you're getting the teams aligned that this is a problem you need to solve for, and you recognize that this full life cycle needs to be under the direction of one referee, as Steve put it earlier on, I think that's entirely the first step here on how you get going.
All right, let's take a look at what people think about their current process, and that'll help us drill down deeper into how do we drive revenue enablement. So weigh in for us, will you, about how would you rate your current sales enablement program's effectiveness, or whatever you're calling it? Is it highly effective, somewhat ineffective, or highly ineffective? And then we'll move on to talking about revenue enablement. We have a few good questions as well. So Shay, when we get enough responses, let us know and see where we are.
And also, well, I'm going to add to Jeff's while we're waiting for the poll answers. One of the ways I've started to try to help people understand, no, if you train them, they don't just get it right every time. And oh, by the way, this is the reason Litmos's business exists. Because that learning is an ongoing process, is you show a picture of the forgetting curve. If you're not familiar with the forgetting curve, curve by Ebbinghaus, it's not a slide we have in here, but Jeff, if you do that, and if you show that to people and they go, oh, so what you're saying is if you train them for 2 hours in the classroom, in 3 months, they're not going to remember it exactly the same. They're not going to apply it the same. No, they're not. And that's why we have to have ongoing train on fewer things, and then coach on the fewer things that you do to a point of mastery. That's the difference.
Yeah, go ahead.
We don't just go to school for 2 days out of the year, right? Like, our kids go to school for months. So think about it like that too.
Right. So pretty predictable. Most people, 90% actually are somewhat effective or somewhat ineffective. It's a work in progress. And in terms of the forgetting curve, the reinforcement piece, just for all types of learning, is the biggest problem that learning people say they have. And they keep working on it, they keep trying to improve it, but because of the time involved, because of it, learning has been so event-centered historically, it's very difficult to get off that. All right, so let's drill down and go on to how do we drive revenue enablement? And Chris, I think you were gonna get us started on this one.
Yeah, look, I think for the group here on the call today, obviously you joined because you're looking to, how do I improve this? I recognize I have the problem. We've talked a lot about the issues and the evolution of revenue enablement today, but like, how do you get started? And I think if you chunk it out into 3 different steps here, it'll get that inertia out of the way and just get going. And the first always starts with like understanding your customers, like truly deeply understanding your customers, who they are, and how your products or services really solve their pain points at the end of the day. So you do have to invest some time. You have to peel the onion. You have to look at data around your customers, understand where they're coming from an industry standpoint, a size perspective, and really listen to their feedback. Because once you do that, then you can gear your sales and marketing efforts to provide value to those customers and truly solve their pain points. I think once you have that wrapped up, then you start looking at the processes you have today. So spend time having one-on-one dialogues with those people in customer-facing roles, the enablement team, and really understand how each team handles the launch of a new product or service in your organization, the challenges that team faces, and the tasks that the team believes they should be handling or they shouldn't be handling. Because once you map out that customer journey end to end, you're going to see very obvious gaps in that process where people just aren't picking up the ball and it's dropping. And that will be the obvious areas to highlight and to fix first off. And the way you fix these things in a lot of cases is leveraging technology and automation to help you do that, right? So if you're going to scale an effective revenue enablement campaign across multiple roles, like we talked about before, but not only internally, also those external roles, like your external facing learners, like your customers, like your resellers, your channel partners, your suppliers, people like that, you're going to need technology to help you scale. And learning is always more impactful if you can deliver it where the learner lives. And for revenue enablement, that's generally in the CRM. So you're going to want technology that integrates with your CRM, can give very just-in-time learning when the problem occurs within the CRM. That is very impactful. We talked about before, just like Steve was going on about how learning isn't just give me 30 minutes of training in January and then I forget. It's about micro bite-sized learning, just like a drip campaign that you would do in marketing. It's hit them again, remind them again. And that is when you achieve mastery, that constant iteration and tackling it with a learning journey like that. And then, of course, leveraging AI. Like, we're at an exciting time to be alive, to say the least. Like, AI is real and it is making work a lot easier for us at the end of the day. So leveraging AI to really looking at the data, understanding like what's tripping up people consistently to improve the overall learning process, and help triage the problem areas in your organization. I think these are really like some key steps you can take to get it involved and get going with your revenue enablement program.
One question that I have, like as we've gotten deeper into this, it's very easy for us to come back and say, like, okay, here's what, we want to drive revenue enablement, but it has to start from the top, right? And like we had said this before, now I'm almost going to guarantee that no one from the top is on this webinar right now within someone's organization, right? So, I mean, maybe they are, and that'd be cool. But I guess my question for y'all is, what if you find yourself in that frontline leader role or that mid-tier leader role? Like, what are some tips that y'all would give? And I'll start, because fundamentally, I believe that no training is going to stick, whether it's internal, external, if the frontline leaders are not bought into it. And so if they're bought into it and they find it like it's going to make their lives easier, then everything can work out.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. I want to clarify some terms. We're going to say individual contributors are the reps.
Yeah.
Then you've got first level managers or first level leaders. They manage the reps. They have to be on board. They're I think of them as the parents. Enablement, we're the aunts and the uncles. We can't hold anybody accountable. We can't. They don't report to us. Those are the parents. The second levels manage the managers. I would also argue you have to have a second level on board too. I don't see learning initiatives, big learning initiatives succeed unless you have the second level on board aligning the first level. Honestly, in some odd way, the third levels and these other, if it's a big enough company and they have a huge org chart, once you get into that executive suite, they're kind of disconnected. I don't think that matters as much. But if the first levels are not on board and that second level over that team, forget it.
Well, and that's kind of the point. Like, what a lot of folks have always, or what a lot of folks have thought historically, is that it has to come from the top. And I guess what I want to share with everyone that's on here is that it actually can start with you, right? If you are that second level or frontline sales leader, or customer success leader or anything like that, it can start with you. And everything that Chris is talking about, you could potentially grab one of those nuggets and work on it with your team. And if you can show some results, it might take a little bit longer, but at the very least, you might be able to interest people at that more senior level.
And just a real quick story on this one, going to that aunt uncle metaphor. My sister and brother-in-law allow their children to walk on countertops barefoot in their home. Not what we allow in our home, but we were at our lake house last summer and I saw them up there and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Right. But the thing is, then I go back and they're like, oh, no, like, that's okay. You're like, whoa. So if the parent says that's okay, now granted, it's my house, so I get to override there. But if the parent says that's okay, there's nothing you're going to do in enablement.
Right.
Because they're going to say, we don't care. Like, and where this kind of comes is in your own worlds, it manifests is when they have those other priorities and they say, hey, we believe value selling initiatives and ROI, business value assessments are a big priority. We have a customer like this right now, but it's not as big a priority as these 4 other learning initiatives. Then it's not going to get done. If it doesn't get prioritized by those second level leaders and first levels by the parents, there's nothing you as the aunt, uncles, and enablement are going to do.
So if you don't take anything away from this, if you go over to Steve's house, do not walk on his counter. Right?
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, Ted. I'll kind of summarize a little bit of what we've learned over time. The first is the culture piece. If you don't allow the teams to understand the value culturally of what it means to be enabled and to learn all the time, you're never going to get the outcomes you want. The second thing that we've done oftentimes is put this in as MBOs or part of people's variable compensation. And that drives behavior. I know you don't want to do that oftentimes, but we have done that. And then the last thing that I would say is, especially for those second line managers, talk to the ROI that you get from that and show the examples or do the storytelling of who has done it really well, what outcomes they achieved, and then you document that and you have those stories for everybody to hear. You do that and you'll get a lot more enablement value and a lot better outcomes.
One of our advisors, Kelly Spencer, he does, this is a good build on you, Jeff, is that he says, if you don't report on it and if you don't compensate people for it, they're not going to do it.
Yep.
Right. And 100%. That's what the hardest aspect.
It goes to the old thing with learning. What's in it for me? What's in it for the learner? And if you're not going to get compensated for it, if you're not going to get credited for it, if you're not going to get some attention for it, then it's not something you're going to do, to your point. So we touched on AI. Let's touch on it a little bit more. How does AI help in this whole revenue enablement process, Jeff?
So having come from a AI startup company after the last 4.5 years, I can tell you it's ever evolving and it's come a long way in just an amount of time. I mean, we were literally talking about AI and it was not cool. We were definitely not the cool kids on the block, I can tell you that. But what it does from a revenue enablement perspective, the first thing is it gives you a ton of data. And you need to use that data. There is no lack of people inputting things into your CRM or giving you information on how you need to go to market. So what I've seen from the best kind of companies here is that they use that to identify patterns and trends. And we use it specifically, and I know my team hears this all the time, but we use what's called the Ted Williams strike zone. Kind of, predates a lot of, the younger generation, but this is the theory that you're going to use data to determine what pitch you're going to swing at that's 90 miles an hour down the middle of the plate so that you bat over 400 versus chasing everything as a business. And the same thing applies to how you do that with AI and how you enable your team to go after the best things. The second is really just around the tools. There's a bunch of AI out there that can, take away a lot of the remedial tasks that either the sales reps or the CSMs or the partner organization was using in the past for, doing things like, creating emails, doing things like recapping a call, and a call recording. These are all things, and updating Salesforce, because we know no sales rep enjoys updating Salesforce. I mean, how many times we have that conversation today? But the whole point is there's those tools that can allow you to do that. And then the last thing that I think that is really big right now in AI is how do you take that tool and use that for personalized recommendations to the bite-sized learnings that Chris was talking about before. So this is a sales rep or a CSM inside of an existing account, wondering how another customer uses their tool or uses their solution and the outcomes that they've achieved, and then presenting that right at the exact time. Or if somebody's gone and taken training and going back and using AI to peruse that content and give you that answer right in real time. So this is the evolution that you're going to start to see with AI around the personalization, which is very, very cool. And then the last thing I'll tell you about AI is that you're just going to see enablement organizations and you're going to see companies using this more and more and more. And the people that are curious about what AI does and the people that want to understand how you can use it effectively in your organization, especially around enablement and content. Even in our world, we will have AI for creating content for learners. They can be very personalized. So those are all things that you're going to start to see and things you got to think about in relation to AI. And I'm certainly curious, Steve and Ted, how you're seeing AI in your world today.
I would say the first thing is mostly confusion from people.
Yeah.
Like I went to a conference either last week or the week before, and I sat through like a day's worth of presenters talking about AI, and I'm very close with a lot of people that were in attendance there, and everyone just kept coming up to me saying, but all they say are like the two letters, as if we know like what to do with this. Right. And so we need like AI enablement, and not to blow up, like everything Jeff is saying is 100% correct. But I think like to answer your question, Jeff, like people are coming back and just saying, where do we get started? Like, what do I do with this? And like that's the biggest, that's what I'm seeing when I'm talking to folks.
Brought some concretes. I'm going to give everybody out there some like super concretes. And this is the problem with shiny objects. Problem with shiny objects is we love to chase them.
Right.
Okay. Obviously, the first thing you want to start with is where is the friction in your marketing and sales funnel or your customer expansion funnel? Where is the friction and where is the problem that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed? Start with that first. But I'm going to give you a potpourri of ideas and you can sort of pick off of the menu, which ones you would go for. Well, one is something as simple as in the top of funnel and how people are using like LinkedIn Navigator now has AI generative summaries that are really handy, or using ChatGPT to ask simple questions like, what are Procter & Gamble's business units? Who do they compete with? Those kinds of things. Like you can get summarizations of 10Ks and 10Qs. There's all that kind of thing. Then you move into like conversation intelligence with call recording, transcription, summarization of the meeting that's happening. You'll probably notice, I think we believe we have some bots sitting here and recording this meeting. This is kind of standard technology you guys have seen. We're, of course, Mediafly, full disclosure, we're in that line of business, but you're going to see like the Gongs, the Choruses, the Us's of the world out there for that. And then that can also spit out some sort of a summarized follow-up email So you have a starting point for writing your follow-up email. That's another area where people are using it. Another area where I see people using AI is around content management and the sprawl of figuring out what content people are using, not effective, what's not. So there are lots of places that people are using it, but again, start with the problem statement rather than going and finding the solution and seeking a problem. That's what people are doing now. That's the enemy. Don't do that.
And as an enablement leader, the one thing that I would say is get in front of this versus behind it, like Jeff was talking about, because if you some of your people are out there doing it now, and if you can teach them how to use it, like something like a ChatGPT, like it'll allow you to put some guardrails in place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's do one more poll question and get a sense of what people believe has the greatest impact on revenue. And it may be all of the above, but just take a look at these and let us know what you think are the biggest impact. Is it leveraging AI powered tools for guided selling? Are you using those already? Focusing more on revenue retention, improving sales leadership, we talked about a little bit, continuous sales onboarding to combat the forgetting curve, all of the above equally, or none of the above?
Here we go again. There could be like 12 more options, but those.
Yep.
And for what the record state, that Zoom webinar limits the number of options. Plus,
Yes, yes, they do. Yes, or I would have done a lot more. Yeah, while we're waiting on this one, I just wanted to, we've done a lot of research on the use of AI, and it's just amazing to me how people in various areas of learning are really struggling to just get off the ground and really reluctant to try things. And you've got to start somewhere. And even if you just use it in your personal life and do some prompts and just get just comfortable with generative AI, you've got to start somewhere. This is not going away. And getting started and being part of the conversation in your organization about how AI is going to work is going to be really important. Let's see what we've got here, Shay. I saw the poll disappear. Do we have results? Here we go. So yeah, again, 32% above, all of the above equally. And then, actually the biggest answer was continuous sales onboarding to combat the forgetting curve, which that may be something on takeaways and discussion at the end we want to get into. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go into key takeaways. I'll go around the horn and just get some final thoughts and key takeaways from all of you before we get into some questions. Steve, let's start with you. What are some of the things top of mind that you think people should take away from this today?
Takeaway is, you've heard the word alignment a lot. Take that away and figure out ways that you can essentially drive a sales process internally to get alignment. Honestly, I think a big part of our job in enablement is alignment as the aunts and uncles. We just have to, not really a choice. Another big takeaway is start with the problem statement and what you're trying to achieve first, then go after the AI. That's going to help you get there. And then the last thing is teach fewer things. Always be thinking, and Ted and I had a mentor who said this, it was so true. He would say, teach the fewest things that will move the needle on a business metric, and then coach the hell out of them. And the way you think about that is training, teaching someone something new, coaching, seeing that they actually master it and optimize it. Those are different things.
Ted?
Yeah, I would say, to build on Steve's points there, it's very easy for you to jump on, as an enablement leader or someone in enablement or someone focused on enablement, to jump on a webinar like this and to think, okay, this would be great in a perfect world, but I can't apply this kind of stuff. My biggest takeaway for you is actually you can, right? Being that frontline leader is the most impactful position in a business, because you drive what is going to happen within your organization at the rep level, at the front line, on the front lines, in the reps, and what they're doing. And so start having small conversations similar to what Steve just mentioned, but have those conversations and be very tactical in what you're trying to improve, and then measure your results, and then keep going from there and build on that, and invite more people from around the revenue spectrum, like we showed before, in product, customer success, sales development, those different areas, marketing.
Jeff?
I think I got 3 key takeaways here. The first is just the culture change. The thing that we all have to understand here, and certainly coming from an AI company, the half-life of skills changes every 2 years. So if you think about even somebody who graduates college, those skills, 2 years later are not even applicable anymore. So think about a revenue enablement strategy. How often are those skills applicable? We just talked about AI. That is changing so fast. I don't even think it's going to be 2 years that people are going to be able to understand that. So in order for you to have a buy-in at the table, you're going to have people buy into culture change. And that is certainly going to be what it's going to be around, certainly enablement. The next is the measurement. Ted talked a little bit about this, but those companies that actually measure, the ROI, and they have I would say, the feedback on what enablement did to change the organization and got everybody to buy in cross-functionally, and you measure that success, is huge. And then the last thing I would say is we learn through storytelling, and we need to have everybody have a story that will give you the ability to enable anybody in an organization, whether that's a CSM did all these great things, and because of that, they renewed the customer. The partner team, went out and did all these right things, and this is how you should do it. But those stories are what are going to move the needle. And those are the things that will train people on why it's important to certainly continue to learn and have that culture that I alluded to earlier.
And Chris.
And not to echo everything else, but I think the one thing that I would leave everybody with is the theme of personalization. And this is twofold. It's one on how do you get going? Every organization has an all-star rep or 2 or 3 or 4. Really look at them, try to dissect how they got to where they are in their career and how they found success, and build your revenue enablement program around what's made them successful. And the second point is they could be your strongest advocate. Those taking the training and the learning want to see their peers telling the story of how they got to find success. So pull them into the storytelling of the enablement process, leverage that with the tools when you're doing creating the courses and the programs, because I think that's a really powerful message to get them to actively listen to what's being said.
Great. Anything else before we'll do announce the raffle winner and then get into some questions before we wrap up? Okay, so Shay, do you want to let us know who the raffle winner is today?
Yes, thank you, Claude. So before we wrap up today, I would like to announce the lucky winner of our raffle. Congratulations to Charlene Sasu on winning today's prize, a $100 Amazon gift card. We will send you an e-card shortly to celebrate your win. Congratulations. Claude, back over to you.
Thanks. So we have just a few minutes for questions. And one thing that popped up in the chat was when you were talking about half-life of skills and all the things are changing. We got a couple of questions around with all the things that need to be done and with all the things that are changing. What are some tactics or strategies that you can rely on that are, no matter what the situation is, that it's a good forward-looking strategy or tactic to start with if you're struggling to figure out a target or a focus? Got a couple questions around that.
Sure. So I can start here, Claude. The first thing, and I think Steve alluded to this earlier, is you have to identify the problem first, right? And right now, reskilling, upskilling, and the assessment of skills is very much at the focal point or the crescendo right now of learning. So you're going to have to either look at leveraging an AI tool or using internal tools to say, we're an engineering firm and we need to reskill, the certifications and the project management capabilities and the AI understanding of, our engineering team, whatever that is. You've got to go out and you've got to identify that. Then you've got to go out and say, the value of that to the business is that we are going to be assigned to more projects, we're going to get more revenue, and we're going to be the most skilled people that go after those projects. You got to start there. Then the next thing I would tell you around just the ability of the half-life of skills is that if an individual doesn't understand that, and you need to show them that with either mentoring or the ability for them to be coached by somebody that is in a role or in a future role that they want. You're going to have to identify for them what those skills are that they have and what the skills that are trending in the market. And that's going to show them that, those people that go out and get new skills and get new learning get paid more money. And there's the direct outcome and the direct correlation to that. Therefore, there is obviously a career trajectory tied to the understanding of skills and the upskilling and reskilling. And certainly companies want to retain those types of people too. So you've got a nice cultural fit, enablement, embedded, and then ultimately you understand what skills people need. And I'll pause there. I'm sure the panel has some other things too.
Well said from my perspective.
Yeah, the assessments are so important. And let's be honest, it's the thing that most people don't want to take the time to do. And by the people, I mean the parents. Parents, they don't want to know. Maybe they don't want to know, or they're like, oh, we're too busy working our existing pipeline to figure out where our skills are deficient. And here we go again. That's where we have to sell them on, like, you guys, why would you keep chopping wood with a dull axe? It makes no sense. We have to sharpen the axe first. Here's the pipeline metrics and data that show you're chopping wood with dull axes. And I know you're telling me preserve selling time, but right now, how you're spending the selling time, the behaviors of your reps during the selling time is not equating to business results. So we have to decide collectively to go sharpen that axe.
And assessments don't have to be difficult either. Like they can, or complicated. Like this can be very simple. Like it could be as simple as a scorecard, right? If you're looking at aspects of the sales process where you're doing particularly poorly, like just build a scorecard and listen to 5 calls for each person, like you can start super small.
Other thoughts on that? We also got.
I'll add to that is, overall,
go ahead.
When I go reflect back on the last question we asked to the group, what people really want to know is, am I onboarding new talent effectively? And everybody wants to get the ramp time for a new rep getting in the door down quickly, right? Whether or not that's 6 months, 3 months, whatever the norm is for your organization, the more you can invest in learning up front to get them productive. Sales is naturally a very transient role. People are coming in and out all the time, but the more effective you can get them onboarded and selling that first deal quickly, like that's real ROI you could take back to senior leadership to reinvest in this program and get a snowball going here to do more. So I just think that's really important.
And investing in that onboarding training during onboarding drives that culture change that Jeff mentioned. If you start at the beginning and you make sure that they understand learning is important, training is important, that's part of who we are, that will help you going forward. We got a couple questions or comments around coaching. People have mentioned coaching a few times. What are the best way to get a coaching program started in your organization if you don't have one? I think a lot of people get stuck on it.
Well, actually, this ties to Rachel had a great comment here with the, don't stop with one level of leaders. It's in some ways, it's actually like an enterprise sales campaign that we're running in enablement, where we have to persuade as the aunts and uncles, multiple level parents and grandparents to get aligned and get on the same page. And that really turns into almost like a political campaign or like an enterprise sales campaign.
Yeah.
Like you got to get buy-in for coaching first before you go do any coaching. Otherwise, people are going to feel, you hear a lot of big brother, like Ted mentioned call recording. Most of you out there probably have some sort of conversation intelligence with recording and summarization. Right off the bat, if you start doing call coaching, you're going to ruffle a lot of feathers real quick unless those first level managers, second level managers on board, and unless they communicated it effectively to the individual contributors. If you don't do that, people will push back and reject and immediately just say big brother, and that just stops all conversation.
Right. Final point before we wrap up today. Anybody want the last word?
Chris, Jeff, come on. It's your show.
I think I'll make one quick comment and I'll let Chris close us out. I just, again, go back to culture. If you're not going to get buy-in from the organization and you're not going to get buy-in from the people doing it, you're going to unfortunately fail. And there's a lot of great stories out there that you can share. And there is this view of learning and enablement has got to change in order for us to be successful. And that's going to have to be the cultural, carrot you're going to have to lead everybody with. Chris?
Yeah, I would say just start small. We threw a lot of things at you here today. It could be overwhelming at times. Try to find a very small problem at your organization where you can inflict change and prove out the real ROI behind it, because that will build momentum behind you and allow you to break down those cultural barriers and get that message up to the top. Because once you do that, then you'll be able to keep going and prove out the full end-to-end life cycle of the buyer journey here.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been a great discussion. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I know the beginning of the week is a tough time to take time out for a webinar. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks to Litmos for sponsoring, and for Steve, Chris, Jeff, and Ted for your expertise and great dialogue. And we look forward to seeing folks on another webinar very soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Bye-bye.